Is PlayStation blurring the line with their PC ports and a push for a stronger presence on the PC platform? I'm going to look at something from xfire.com in a moment where the website True Trophies has found something that looks like maybe PlayStation is gearing up for some type of an account synchronization setting, maybe for trophies of games that you have played on Steam. But there's a variety of ways this could play out. One of those would be PlayStation puts like a launcher on PC, which I would not be in support of. I think it's far better to just lean into having a storefront on Steam, but maybe synchronizing those trophies so that any game that you play, you could sync it up with your PlayStation account and then get credit for anything that you might be doing in the game on Steam. I know that bringing games to PC is a cause for debate amongst sometimes the most loyal PlayStation fans. They don't think the games should land on PC. There's ongoing debates about when that should happen. I've continued to say about a year after a big first-party title comes out, you should put it on PS Plus. That then sort of gets your big window of sales, and then at around 18 months, you could move it to PC. So in my mind, the sweet spot is somewhere between 18 to 24 months. Now, I've had people disagree and say, no, games should not be coming to PC that quickly. It really hurts the demand of sales of the PS5. I don't think that's the case. I think that's far too long for the average consumer to say, well, I'll wait. You're also anticipating people saying, well, since they're going to push it on PC, I'll wait and then also buy a very expensive PC that can output the same graphical performance. You'd have to bare minimum probably spend up around $1,000 to get a rig strong enough to replicate or duplicate the types of performances that we're seeing in games like Spider-Man 2. Whenever that comes to PC, if you want it to look that good and have all the ray tracing turned on, you would like to have to invest in a fairly expensive rig comparatively to like a $400 digital PS5. And so I don't think there's a danger of bringing games to PC too early if it's around the 18-month to the 24-month mark. But I also don't think there's a need for PlayStation to do anything with their own launcher. I think that generally sort of muddies the waters, makes things cloudy. It's one of the reasons that people are more critical of their Xbox games whenever they come to PC. If you go to the Xbox store and look at reviews, a lot of them complain about how well the game runs, but then you go to Steam and it's not necessarily as extreme. Sometimes it's literally the Xbox store causing issues. I myself would go to use it with Game Pass Ultimate and install a game on my PC. It was easier to play with a friend of mine, and it was always a headache. It never felt like it ran all that well. I think leaning into an existing ecosystem with Steam and existing storefront, people already have their games, they already have their collections, and they don't want to go somewhere else. It feels like it would be pretty much wasted effort and R&D and spending to launch their own storefront. But this is why people are thinking that that might be a reality. According to xfire.com, True Trophies, a website dedicated to tracking PlayStation trophies, has been at the forefront of this discovery. The site's scanners recently identified a mysterious new platform, the PSPC, accompanying a new trophy list, the Trophy Set. This isn't directly attached to any known game, but it is believed to be indicative of a fresh platform distinct from the PS5, or at least somewhat related to it, reminiscent of how trophies were once shared across PS4, PS Vita, and PS3. Despite their distinct platforms. The specific nature of this tag is still under debate. It could stand for either PlayStation PC or PlayStation Studios PC, or either of the two. So this is why people are thinking that they might be potentially launching their own launcher. And again, I don't see that. I don't see that as being a good choice. I actually think it's more likely that the other clue we have in Spider-Man is what the most likely outcome is, and they talk about that here. They say strengthening this theory was the integration of PSN support for the PC port of Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered when it released in 2022. Although this game didn't encompass trophy support, it did incentivize players to link their Steam and PSN accounts in return for in-game rewards. I remember at the time there was speculation they were going to do like online or something, or co-op, which is not the case. That led to speculation that maybe that was in there because there was going to be co-op in Spider-Man 2 or something. That all turned out to not be true. Unless Insomniac has somehow managed to keep a secret, a huge secret, up to the 11th hour. The review embargo of Spider-Man 2 dropped. The reviews are glowing. They're amazing. No indication from leaks and spoilers that there's any kind of co-op, but that did lead to some of that speculation. What I think is the most likely outcome here is that PlayStation would like to have a more synchronized experience for people who buy a game on Steam because they probably have existing PlayStation users that do it, but they're also considering the fact that there might be PC users that say, man, I really loved playing Miles Morales. I really loved playing Spider-Man Remastered. I'm going to get a PlayStation 5 for Spider-Man 2. With as impressive as the game looks, $400? Like, if you look at the hardware reports on Steam, this is something I've consistently said. The hardware reports on Steam show most people having mid to low-end PCs. Basically, PCs that aren't quite as strong or strong enough to turn on all the fancy things. 4K, ray tracing, maintaining high frames per second. People on, 30 series cards, 20 series cards, 40 series cards. They're in the minority. And I have always said, if you're looking at your PC and you're anticipating playing something like Spider-Man and you want to turn on all the pretty things and make it look really fancy and make it look really nice, you're likely going to have to upgrade something if you're in the majority. The majority of the PC user base is just not on a rig that can turn on all those things. Why not just spend $400 and get a PS5 digital has always been my pushback. You could spend around $1,000 and get a PS4 digital and a PSVR 2 if you're interested in VR. A lot of VR companies are pivoting to the PSVR 2 because it can harness the power of the PlayStation 5, and standalone VR devices are always going to struggle a little bit. They're not going to be quite as strong, and that's very appealing. So you can really kind of step into a lot of the new games, a lot of the new game types and performance. So I wonder if Sony's considering that. Right? I mean, Spider-Man 2 is going to be pretty compelling to anybody who played Spider-Man on PC. I had somebody say, what's the prettiest game you can play on PC right now? Cyberpunk, I would say, has kind of taken that crown when you turn everything all the way up. Ray tracing, have a strong rig that can maintain it. Prior to that, I had a lot of people saying that Spider-Man Remastered and Miles Morales were very, very pretty on PC. And they may be looking at these trailers and these reviews, and unless they're super, super picky about graphics and how everything looks, they may be saying, man, I might grab a PlayStation. Well, one of the things you'd want to be able to give that person is the ability to sync things up. Hey, you already played Spider-Man. You got a bunch of trophies, so your account gets the trophies. And sometimes there are games where the sequel recognizes the fact that you've played before, and then they give stuff in the game. I don't know if they're going to do that with Spider-Man, but I think this is a great example of how PlayStation could sort of bridge the gap between the two communities, because the PC user base is quite large, and the PS5 Pro is potentially on the horizon. So if the PS5 Pro lands and is, $600, you have to again consider the cost that you would need to output to upgrade your more mid or low end PC. What would you have to spend to get a gaming rig that could output the increased performance, the increased ray tracing, the things that we're probably going to see on the PS5 Pro in games like Spider-Man 2? If they're going to go back and retroactively turn things on or update things. This is, again, something Sony's probably considering. We want to streamline the experience of anybody that might be coming from PC or has games on PC and has games on the console as well. And more from the article here, they say, with PlayStation Studio PCs like God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, Days Gone, and Spider-Man Remastered, there's no longer an inherent need for a PSN account, setting apart from some of the Xbox Game Studios titles on Steam, which has a strict Xbox Live account requirement. This advantage with Xbox's approach, however, is the convenience of shared achievements and saved progress. I think that's well worth it. I know people probably don't like that when they're like, man, Xbox requires me to have an account. But if you're saving your save files in the cloud, or if you've been working on some achievements, or maybe it's a two-player game and you want to play with your buddy and it's just easier, instead of trying to do cross-play. Some games don't do cross-play, some games do, things like that. That actually can help streamline the process. Sometimes I might play a game on PC and think, oh, this would be a great game for couch co-op with my wife, and then I'd be able to bring it over and have everything. Now, I think the one thing that would be a risk here is that if you really synchronize this and people start thinking of it as a more unified approach with their account, they might feel a little different about having to buy the game twice. Like if you buy the game in Steam, you would then also have to buy it on the PlayStation 5, and that might not sit well with people. I think that is a danger of unifying platforms, because they're not going to understand that you didn't buy that from PlayStation. You bought that from Steam. You have a license to play the game in and on the Steam platform. That's not the same. So I would anticipate that potentially being a complaint. Now, the article continues here, and it says, an important aspect to note is that while there's optimism surrounding Sony's tentative steps into the integration, a future with seamless sharing between PlayStation and PC accounts without the need for an exclusive launcher would be nice. Sony hasn't confirmed anything yet. The trophy list, picked up by True Trophies, seems to be a test, given that it's not linked to a specific game. Furthermore, it's unusual for developers to submit their platforms to PSN, suggesting this could be an initiative by Sony. And that's the way you would want it to be. You wouldn't want this to be something where you're having to depend on each individual game to do the trophy list, to update it, to push it out, to sync. This would need to be an account level decision that PlayStation implements so that anything you do is saved to the account and then transfers and syncs up. So anything you're doing on either platform gives you credit for those achievements, trophies, or your save files. You wouldn't want this to be something that is game dependent. And I wouldn't really want developers to have it to be, worrying about this. This is something that it would fall squarely on PlayStation if this is something that they would want to do. But the article continues to talk about how things are very much changing, and I think the push to PC makes sense. As the gaming landscape evolves, so do business models and strategies. Sony's expansion of its PC portfolio shouldn't be surprising at all, considering the burgeoning competitiveness of the games industry and the escalating AAA budgets. This is something that I've talked about a lot right here, escalating AAA budgets. We went and looked at the price of games, and I believe it was in the Nintendo 64 era, where there was a Mario and a Zelda game that was made by about 200 people, and it was about $11 to $12 million. So basically $6 million per. And that's nothing. Nothing. I mean, game, budgets now are in the 200s to hundreds of millions of dollars. Very, very much more expensive. Larger teams, larger bandwidth. The time to develop the games is significantly longer, which increases risk. You may think you have a great idea and the market's trending in a certain way, and so you start developing the game, and 4 or 5 years later, the market has shifted and demand for the product has evaporated. This has happened to a lot of games that have thought, hey, we're going to capitalize on Battle Royale. We're going to capitalize on an MMO. We're going to capitalize on a looter shooter. There are a lot of games that have gone through this, and when they finally get to market, the market's opinion has changed. That is very difficult, which makes sense if you have a successful IP, if you have a successful franchise, either doing a sequel or taking it to PC or porting. That's why there's remasters. That's why there's remakes. That's why companies are doing this. They're trying to offset cost and risk of probably the next project. They go on to say here, it's a notion further bolstered by Sony's intention to launch its first-party and third-party PlayStation-exclusive multiplayer titles on PC simultaneously, especially as part of its massive live service lineup through 2026. However, with innovation comes reservations. Yeah, I've got my own opinions on the live service push. 12 games by 2026, that's not happening. I think maybe 3 or 4 of them actually come out. I think 1 or 2 of them are probably actually successful. I think Bungie's going to kind of come down the line of studios working on titles like this, and they're going to be just bringing the hammer down. They're going to be executing a lot of games and not saying, that these are good to go. So I don't think that is that's a goal they're going to hit, and I'm on record as to saying that. But that is true that if they're going to do a live service game, it's going to launch in both places, both the PlayStation 5 and PC. Personally, my opinion is that if you want a live service game to do really well, it needs to be everywhere. I understand PlayStation not wanting to probably put their property on Xbox, but that's been my opinion for a very long time. If you want your live service game to succeed, it needs to be free and it needs to be everywhere. I actually argue you should probably make it free, put it everywhere, and do early access, for a couple of years to figure out player behavior, player desires, so you don't build as much of the game. You build small samples of the game. So as the foundation and trajectory of the game gets influenced, you can make those changes before you build the rest of it, right? You learn those things in the early stages. I think Baldur's Gate 3 is a good test case for how you could build. It's not a live service game, but I think it's a great test case for how you build a game that is deep and vast and has freedom, which those are all of the great hallmarks of a good ongoing game, and that's been something that I've said for a while. So they end the article by saying the fear is they're going to do the Epic game thing, the PC launcher thing, the Xbox thing, where they're going to build their own storefront and build their own launcher, and they're really worried that they would do that, and they don't want them to. As I said on the outset, I'm kind of against that idea too. I don't think it makes sense. I don't think you get good adoption rates. I think it tends to cause problems, and it's frustrating to people. And since the PlayStation ecosystem, since the PlayStation storefront and culture is not trying to get people on PlayStation Plus, like that's not central to their identity. What's central to their identity is really great big titles that they sell. Just port them and throw them on Steam and let those people buy them. Stay away from Denuvo and DRM and anti-piracy. Don't do any of that crap. Don't rush your ports like they did with The Last of Us because they were trying to capitalize on the TV's show's popularity. Don't do that. You know, have good, solid ports, landing at a good rhythm so that people on PC can continue to enjoy the PlayStation games and maybe even jump over the fence and buy a PlayStation 5 or a PlayStation 5 Pro in the future. Would love to know what you think. Is there a blurring line here? What do we think is going on with this trophy list and account synchronization? You can leave a comment below. You can become a member for $5 and you can come to the members only debrief that always follows these uploads. I also do extra content, you know, in the evenings, and I do something called the Writer's Room. We do a lot of extra content for our members, but if you don't want to do a membership, that's fine. You can hit subscribe, the bell button, and the like button, and I'll see you in the next video.